every foreign minister spoke at the platform today, but there will not be a resolution or agreement. Do you know why? Because in its current form, the UN is a toothless body. It is supposed to resolve major global issues, but most of the time, it is deadlocked. Just think about this ongoing session. There are so many issues for the world leaders to discuss. There are wars in Ukraine, Ethiopia, Yemen. There is an unprecedented food crisis, a global cost of living crisis, and not to mention multiple human rights issues. Does the United Nations have a plan to tackle this? The simple answer is no, and the reason is the structure of this organization. The UN General Assembly is basically built on the concept of global democracy. One country, one vote. Vanuatu and Solomon Islands get one vote each, so do the US, China and Russia. Political and military power is irrelevant in the General Assembly. On paper, that is a good thing. Every country must have equal representation. But there was a sinister design behind this setup. You see, the General Assembly may be representative and democratic, but it is also powerless. Case in point being the war in Ukraine. The UN General Assembly has already passed a resolution asking Russia to end the invasion. Has that stopped Vladimir Putin? You know the answer. The fact is, all the power in the UN is concentrated in the Security Council. The General Assembly is like a showpiece, a stage for the world leaders to make the headlines. Their resolutions are non-binding, their condemnations are ignored, and their decisions are in a way swatted aside. Which brings us to the body that does have power, the Security Council, or the Big Boys Club. The victors of World War II declared themselves permanent members of the Council, but after the war, their priorities changed. Today, America and Russia are sworn enemies. So are China and America. As a result, the Council has been split into two camps, the Western camp, America, Britain, France, and the anti-West camp of Russia and China. And to make matters worse, all of them have the veto power, meaning they can kill any proposal in one blow. Does not matter if the entire council is in favor of the resolution, even if one permanent member opposes it, it will be rejected. So that's where the UN stands. A democratic but powerless General Assembly and an undemocratic but powerful Security Council. No wonder the United Nations is failing. Over the years, many countries have tried to make it more representative, India being one of them. India is part of the G4 grouping on United Nations reforms. The other members are Brazil, Germany and Japan. All four of them are seeking a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. It is a noble mission, but here as well there is a drawback. There is no African nation. In fact, two continents are completely unrepresented at the Security Council. South America and Africa, that's 1.9 billion people without a seat at the UNSC. The question is, how can the General Assembly fix this gap? How can it step up when the Security Council fails? One attempt was made in 1950 during the Korea War. It was called the Uniting for Peace Resolution. The idea was simple. If the Security Council is deadlocked, the General Assembly must take the initiative. It must give recommendations to the member states. But like I said, these recommendations are non-binding. Members may or may not accept them. The fact is, there is a priority rift between different members of the UNGA. Let's take this session, for example. The West is focused on Russia's war, Africa is focused on food shortages and security, Asia is focused on oil prices and inflation, and the island nations focusing on climate change. All of them are important issues, but the problem is there is no joint effort to solve them. Even when there is political support, the UN has failed. Like the COVID-19 pandemic. Every country was on the same page against the virus, yet there was no global plan we are still struggling with vaccine inequity, with travel disruptions, and with supply chain issues. If a global body cannot solve these global issues, what is the point? So the bottom line is this. The UNGA session has become a glorified ritual. Every year, world leaders dress up and arrive in New York. They make long and dramatic speeches. But in the end, they offer no solutions. Does this mean the UN has become pointless? Perhaps in theory. But a world without the UN would be even worse. Reminds me of what a former UN chief said. The UN was not created to take mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. It may seem like we have achieved neither, but for that, we must blame our world leaders. Because let's face it, every captain is only as good as the players. Similarly, every organization is only as good as its members. The so-called global powers must realize this. They must pursue immediate UN reforms. A, expand the Security Council, and B, empower the General Assembly. Because right now, the UNGA is an elaborate exercise of stating the obvious. We know what the problems are. We don't need world leaders to list them out for us. The idea must be to find solutions, and on that front, the UN General Assembly has failed so far. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.